everyone. Today we're looking at resolving the invalid UTF-8 middle byte error when parsing a JSON file in a Boomi process. If your Boomi process receives a JSON file that is not encoded as UTF-8 and it contains characters in the extended ASCII range, you could see this error. On the right is an example of the dialog box that shows the error if you run it in test mode. And you might see this error even if your runtime already uses the UTF-8 encoding. Let's take a look at how this appears in a process. Here we have a very simple process that reads a file from the disk and then passes it through a map. We're simply mapping from a JSON profile to a flat file. When we run this, we can see that we get that error in the dialog box. And the reason, if we look at the source document, we see that there's a character here that is obviously in the extended ASCII range. This is the JSON input file. So what do you do when you see this error? Well, the first thing to do is to check the default character encoding of your Boomi runtime. And you can find that under Runtime Management in the Startup Properties. The second thing to do is to try to determine the encoding of the input file. It helps if you know the type of system that the file came from. If it's a Windows-based system, it might not be a UTF-8 file. It might be a Windows 1252 encoded file, or it could be a slightly different format. And the way we correct this problem is to use the data process shape to decode from the document encoding to your runtime's default encoding. If your runtime already uses UTF-8, then that's the only step you need. If your runtime uses a different encoding, then you need to add a second step to encode from your runtime's default encoding to UTF-8. The reason this is necessary is that the JSON parser requires the input file to be in UTF-8 encoding. So let's go back to the process, and this time we'll add a data process shape that uses character decode, and it decodes from Windows 1252, which is the encoding of the input JSON file, and it's going to decode to UTF-8. When we connect that to in the process in front of the map and run it, we see that it passes through the map without a problem. And if we look at the output file, we can see that that character in this string is an O with an umlaut. That's all. Thanks for watching.